Hi there, my name's Colin Sebestyen. I'm going to be showing you some pretty cool stuff that you can make in VIDVOX's VDMX software today. You can find my work at movecraft.com, and you can find some pretty cool stuff that I've made using VDMX at castingshadows.com. This is my live visualism project. So what we're going to be making today, we figured it was Halloween, so I thought it'd be a lot of fun to show you how you could make your very own live 1980s style horror title sequence. Obviously, this is going to be a little inspired by the Netflix hit show Stranger Things, which is coming back for a second season, so we thought this might be appropriate around Halloween to do a tutorial for this. Also, you can look at just about any kind of reference of older 1980s or degraded footage. We're going to be looking at some degraded looks and effects that we can get inside of VDMX. Here's my favorite. This is The Gate from 1987. So let's go ahead and let's take a quick look at what we're going to be making inside VDMX. Also want to give a quick shout out, one final attribute to Star Runner. Thanks to Star Runner for giving me some music, some nice, awesome synthwave that I could use for this demo. So let me go ahead and minimize this browser here, and let's go ahead and fire up VDMX and see what we're going to make. Fade out the music here. Now obviously I'm using a logo that if you've used this software you might recognize, but we can put whatever graphics that we want in here for our title sequence or designs. In this case I'll just quickly target the graphics layer, and I'll change this to just a simple triangle that's being generated dynamically, and I'll cut between some of my different values here. You also notice I was jumping between all these different values and states dynamically, able to turn the rotate properties on and off to be able to kind of like get some cool live cuts in here. So let's go ahead and let's build this thing from scratch. I can't guarantee that we're going to get the exact same look depending on the settings that I have in here, but I'll try and match it pretty quick here in the live demo. So I'm going to go ahead and save this project file, and I'm just going to go ahead Command N for a brand new VDMX project, and let's start from scratch together. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my window here, my full screen output window, and I'm just going to minimize it a little bit, make it a little smaller, just put it over there in the corner, so we can see what we're doing here in the interface. Now when you make a brand new project in VDMX, it's going to go ahead and create a new blank layer for you, and also if you come here to plugins here in the workspace inspector, you can see that it automatically makes two plugins. It just instantiates them. One is a clock, which is going to be the master tempo and timing, and then the other one is going to be a media bin. So right away we're going to need some stuff to trigger. We're going to need some media that we want to trigger, so let's go ahead and load it into our media bin. I'm going to press Command 3, which is my import media inspector, and I'm going to go ahead and find the project where I kind of like collated all this stuff. So I'm going to come in here into projects. Let me go ahead and find some of the source footage. Okay, so actually I'm going to build this whole thing up dynamically. Now the thing that's pretty cool, and the thing that's probably a little different than like something like the Stranger Things title sequence, is that this is totally live. So I'm actually going to build this up also with some what are called live ISF files. Now ISF files are actually shader code that you can trigger the same way you might trigger, say, a video clip or an image. You can learn how to start making your own ISF files with a kind of like a variety of resources online for you, but the most useful ones I think are Shader Toy, and that's where I got some of the code that I'm going to be using in this demo. Right away, actually, there's no built-in fractal noise effect inside VDMX. So if you're a compositor or you're used to working in After Effects, probably you always want to reach for your noise so you can add some variation or breakup in your composites. And so right away, I wanted to make sure that I could get some noise that I can use. I'm using one here that's called gradient noise, which is faster to render, a little bit more performative than some of the other noises. They're going to have different features, like some are going to render noise in 3D, and some are going to render noise in 2D. All these are based on a variant of something called Perlin noise, which was made by the computer scientist Ken Perlin. You can find out more actually on his site. And this has all been like lovingly kind of like explained and commented by this guy, Inigo Quiles. And I also really recommend his website, also a great resource, where he writes, this is 15 years of computer graphics writing, lots of super useful stuff in here. And so cheers to him, kudos to him for actually publishing this all and making it free, and free for us to use in something like VDMX. The other thing, the other quick shout out to URL I want to mention is the Book of Shaders by Patricio Gonzalez Vivo, also a really great learning resource if you want to get started with shader code. And VDMX's own website will tell you how you can convert all the code that you find at those two resources for ISF. So maybe we'll do that as another tutorial, but for now I'm just letting you know how I made this footage, where I got it, a little bit of rearranging, and I was able to kind of create a triangle and some noise for this project. So I'm going to drag that noise right here into my media bin, and that's going to create a little noise, and I'm going to drag in this triangle as well. Remember, both these are dynamic ISF files. So right away here inside layers, I'm going to make a background, and the background is going to be my bed of fractal noise. So I'm going to go ahead and trigger that, and I'm going to get this kind of cloudy result. Now I right away I published kind of like two values inside the JSON dictionary inside the ISF so that they could be available to me, and one is going to be scale, so I can scale this noise up and down, and the other one was just brightness and contrast. Now probably I'd want to put an evolution in here too, but for this demo I think this is fine. So this is going to be my background, and then of course I'm going to need my graphics layer. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this graphics. So I'm going to put the graphics layer above my background in the composite. I'm going to go ahead and target it here in my media bin, and I'll trigger it. Great. So I've also I've published a few variables here that I can manipulate inside of VDMX for this triangle, brightness slider, and then a line width property for this triangle. Great. So obviously this graphics, this is a demo. You could put in a logo here. You could put in a title. You could put in the name of a party or a band's logo, whatever. Okay, so right away we could just start adding kind of like glow effects and blurs and whatever on the graphics and try and start getting the 1980s kind of like glow room effect. You know, a lot of times actually they shot this stuff practically. They'd actually kind of get a studio and fill it full of fog and then cut this stuff out of, you know, either glass or plastic, and then actually shoot it practically. So we're going to be emulating some of the artifacts of that practical process. Rather than applying glows right away here actually on graphics, I'm actually going to split this into two separate layers. I'm going to come here and actually make a new layer, and I'm going to go ahead and call this glow. This lets me treat the glow and kind of what would be happening in the camera separately from what's going to actually be happening kind of on the graphics. So this is going to make the glow effect a lot more controllable. So I can treat kind of like the degradation that's happening on the graphics, like the scaling and the rotating, the actual like transforms, separately from the effects of the glow. So right away, actually here inside glow, I want to change the source. I'm going to come here to the source attribute, and I'm going to change this to a layer. So I'm going to actually use this layer as a source, and I'm going to choose graphics. And that will just go ahead and composite graphics right back in on itself. So that way I can add effects on glow, and I can have different effects on graphics. This also is going to let me kind of like change the opacity. This is also a really classic way to kind of create glow. Just like make a copy, blur it out, and then use add blend mode. Cool. So let's start adding some of the great effects that VDMX ships with, and we can start creating some retro looks here. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually I want to be able to tone down my background. I can change it here with brightness. You notice that this actually just pushes towards gray. So I think right away I need a way to create kind of like some more contrast in here. Now I can do it a variety of ways. I can use color adjustments or color effects, and I can use, you know, like levels or exposure if I like. But one kind of quick down and dirty way to do this is to just go ahead and choose false color, because this will let me just choose a white and black value. I'm going to switch the option here to HSV for hue, saturation, and value. And I'm going to go ahead and just take the saturation down on both these. And that's just going to give me, basically black and white. So what I like about this is I just get a single slider that actually I can control, and this will effectively let me kind of control contrast. So I can, change the black value and change the white value using the simple false color effect. Next insight, and so let me actually go ahead and do what I said I was going to do. Let's tone all this back a little bit. And let's find a nice scale there. I'm trying to create a nice dusty, kind of noisy room effect. Next I'm going to come into graphics, and let's go ahead and let's add some of the graphics effects to start getting this retro kind of look and feel. So I think the first thing I'm going to add is I'm going to simply add in the rotates and the zooms so that I can kind of like cut between all the different shots as it's kind of like slowly rotating and slowly scaling up. Now obviously I could also do this kind of like with width and height, like I could change the width and the height, but you notice the issue here is actually that the glow is still sampling it before actually the width and height transforms. So I want to actually do this in effects. Sometimes you want it here and sometimes you want it in effects. It depends on the needs of your project. So enough talk, let's go ahead and let's add in a rotate effect, and this can be found inside geometry adjustment. I come to rotate, and I can actually just rotate this guy around. You notice because it's an effect, actually I'm getting the results of those effects inside the glow layer. And then let's do an XY zoom. If I come inside geometry adjustment, that's also going to be XY zoom. And it seems to me that probably X should follow Y so that we don't have disproportional scaling. So I'm going to actually come into plugins, and I'm going to build some drivers for these guys. I'm going to build an LFO, which stands for low frequency oscillator, which is just going to kind of like run a function and then return some numbers basically. And this can be used as a data source inside VDMX. That's really great. I'm going to come here and I'm actually going to grab waveform, and I'm going to minimize that. So I got sine, cosine, and ramp. And I'm going to add one more plugin here. I'm going to go ahead and add in a step sequencer. Oops, not preview. Step sequencer. And what I'm going to use this for is to get a bunch of random just kind of like values so that the rotation is slowly kind of like rotating one way and then rotating the other. So I need to modify these guys a little bit further so that they're a little bit more useful for me. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the rate of the LFO way the heck down so we have a slow kind of pushing in and pulling out. And I think probably just the sine wave is going to be fine for the scaling in and scaling out, so that it like slowly oscillates in and then slowly oscillates back away from the camera. For the step sequencer, however, I'm going to change this type from index to a number. And the numbers I want basically between 0 and 1. Because actually if I come back here to my layer and check out my random my rotate effect, it's going to take a value, what's called a normalized value, between 0 and 1. So I'm going to go back here to plugins, and I'm going to hit the little random button right there, and you notice every time I press that random button, that's pretty cool. It gives me a new random value. So I really like the fact that every time I click this thing, it actually gives me a new value. That's pretty cool, a new set of random numbers. So I think I'm going to automate that. So I'm going to right click and go to use data source, and I'm going to set that on, let's say like every, I don't know, just every once in a while, every 8 bars say, just click that over and just give me kind of like a new, that's even, I think even too much. Let's go to use the data source, and let's change that to even a longer period. Let's do 16 bars. I'm going to come here to rate 2 and also slow this way the heck down. So this is now slowed way down, maybe matching this guy of 0.5, maybe even 0.2. I'm going to press Command 2 and come into my UI inspector so that I can manually enter that value. I'm going to press Command, let's see, like 0.02 there on that value. And let's inspect this guy too and also do 0.02. Great. The last thing I want to do is I notice is like chunking between these different values, between 0 and 1, which means I'm going to have a cut. Now that might be the effect that I want, but if I want to like slowly rotate back and forth, I'm just going to come here to interpolation. I'm going to change that value up to 1, which is going to give me kind of a transition between these different values. So you can see actually, if I hit random, get these nice peaks and valleys as it's slowly transitioning from one value to the next value. So let's go ahead and take these data sources and let's see the results of them here in my layer. I'm going to right click here and I'm going to use this data source, which is going to be my step sequencer. And we're going to get this guy slowly rotating. And then I'll do the same thing here for XY zoom. I'll come to the LFO and use a sine wave. Okay, so now this LFO, the levels here on XY and XY zoom are going to be way too big. So I'm going to go ahead and limit them. And I think the minimum, should be, let's say it's still 1, maybe 0.5, 50%. And let's make the maximum be 3 for 300%. And let's go ahead and also inspect this one and give it similar values. Great. And I want you to notice that it actually automatically scales the value to fit between the different envelopes. So this sine wave is kind of like outputting a value. It's automatically scaled and interpreted. So that's pretty useful. All right, so we've got this guy kind of like rotating and moving now. So now we've got the kind of like the transforms worked out. Let's go ahead and let's add some of the glitch and degradations. So you know, this actually, if I come in here to the effects, there's a couple different categories. One is retro and one is glitch. So there's tons of really awesome effects that I can use to create all kinds of these retro styles. So when I was building this project, I noticed right away that VHS glitch caught my eye. This seemed like it would be pretty useful. And right away we get something that looks like this, right? So I'm already starting to like kind of really dig in here, so I'm gonna just tear this guy off, and then I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. And then I'm also kind of done here with these LFOs, these data sources, so I'm just gonna dock them like this, and I'm just gonna put them over there in the corner so that I can come here and just work on these effects for right now. Cool. Okay, so I'm actually gonna start with making this thing kind of look like it was made on film. And then maybe I'll bring the old VHS look back in. So I'm actually going to turn off the scan lines. So I'm going to turn off auto scan, and I'll reduce these values here for the scan line. One scan line and this other scan, one's for noise and one's kind of for offset. So I'm going to bring these guys out, and the scan line size I'm going to get rid of as well. What I'm really interested in here is there's this really cool grain level. You can see this, I can like really crank up the grain, which I think looks really great. Is going to really kind of create that nice noisy effect in there. And then I can also go ahead and I can really create what's called a bleed. So this bleed amount, notice these guys really bleed out, and they separate into these different color bleeds. And this is going to really create this kind of like 1980s neon effect. If I want to go more for the Stranger Things look, I can really make these kind of all be red, you know, kind of like red and maybe even a little bit of white, so we get this nice hot glowing kind of effect going on there. And you know, feel free to like be creative with this and change these up as much as you like. Cool. So I think the other thing that I might like to add here is a little bit of feedback. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to find my zooming feedback. Okay, so I've actually forgotten where zooming feedback here is in this flyout menu for load assets. Well, that's fine. I can actually just come here inside assets, and I can just search for this in my list of assets. So I'm going to go ahead and search for zooming feedback, and there it is. I can now go ahead and just apply it. Cool. So I'm going to have the feedback kind of happen before the glitch, and I'm going to not pre-shift this thing. So I'm going to press Command 2 and inspect these values. And I'm working 1280/720, so let's go 640 and 360, which is going to be half the width and half the height respectively. Great. And then I can, you know, also kind of have fun here. You guys can notice like right away I'm going to get all kinds of zooming feedbacking 1980s video style effects. This is and if I rotate these guys, you know, we really see these differences here. I think this is a little intense. I'm actually going to turn this down a little bit. So I'm going to come back here to feedback level, and I'm just going to turn all of this down. This is way too much. Just a little bit. I'm also going to come into VHS glitch, and I also think that the bleed amount is this is also kind of nuts. So I'm going to turn it down. But hey, you know, it's up to you. Add stuff kind of to taste here as you like it. And you know, also whatever suits the needs of your project. So this is kind of what I meant when I said, like, I think I'll get close to the settings, but it's easy to kind of also, when you're using VDMX, go down a rabbit hole and be like, man, oh, well, that looks cool. Maybe I'll save that as a preset. And well, that also looks pretty cool. Maybe I'll save that as a preset. By the way, saving these presets is just as easy as clicking Save Asset up here, or you can hit the plus key and you can save the states of these things. So that's pretty cool. All right, so that's giving me kind of some of the looks that I want to look for making this thing kind of look like it's shot on film with a little bit of feedback. I think probably the zooming feedback is still up a little intense, but I could go in and tweak these values all day long. Let's go ahead and let's start creating the glow. Okay, so for my glow layer, I'm gonna tear this effects off now, and I'm gonna start working on the effects of the glow. I'm gonna go ahead and add some basically you need some blur right away. So a really classic thing to do in compositing is to just take a layer and feed an image back into itself to blur it, and then to use add blend mode to create the glow. You want to be kind of like with a light touch on this. It's really easy to make glows kind of look kind of unbelievable. Remember what a glow is all about is actually that if you have a really clean room or really clean environment, like your lights aren't going to glow very much. It's all about kind of like the stuff that's in the room that's creating the kind of like the halation effect. So that's one reason why I add this noise, this dust kind of in the room. And then we're going to want to go ahead and also make it feel as though there's more noise in the room when we create our glow, which is going to create something kind of like a volumetric effect. So the first thing I think I'm going to add is I'm going to go ahead and add a bloom. And I'm just going to add quite a lot of intensity here on the bloom. Notice right away I'm starting to get some of the glow. And then I'm just going to simply blur this out too. I'm going to go ahead and add a box blur. And I'm just going to be real subtle here with my blur. I'm just going to kind of mess around with these values till I start getting the bloom and the blur looking the way I like them. The next thing I think I'm going to add is now, okay, so if I want to create that nice volumetric, the gate, or like light shooting through what would be a gobo if you shot practically, would be something called, like that would be like an actual volumetric light. Like you'd actually see the light rays. We can fake this using zoom blur, which will give us this. And if I was to turn off these other blurs, you can really see what this looks like. Again, too, this is kind of up to you. However much you want here is kind of dealer's choice. Mess around with these values till you get what you think is a pretty good glow. The other thing I'm going to do is actually come back into my graphics layer, and I'm going to thicken up that triangle a little bit just so it's easier to see all these things. Cool. So the other thing I want to do is I want to see this noise actually kind of like occlude and affect the glow, the lighting effect that's happening. So I can do this pretty easily in VDMX. I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to create like a layer mask. So I'm going to layer mask, and I'm going to choose the layer mask itself. And I'm going to make sure this happens, I think, probably the bloom I want to have just kind of diffusing into like the film stock. Like that's just kind of like light that's exposing things next to other things. But then the layer mask is like, this is going to be the kind of like dust in the room that's masking everything off. So you guessed it, I can actually just use the mask image. I can choose that background image if I want, and we'll really be able to see kind of like where the background is actually going to be limiting where the glow is occurring. So maybe actually I want that to be a little bit later. I want that to be happening after the zoom blur. So real quick, that's what it looks like with and without, and you can see it's just cutting the light down a little bit. It's a little hard to see. Let me also, another thing I could do is maybe I could create another layer just to control the masking. So I'm going to do that. I'm actually just going to press plus here, and I'm going to create I'm just going to go ahead and create a noise mat, and inside noise mat I'll create another instance of noise, and I think probably I want to have a different scale and different brightness setting here to cut out the different noise. And then the other thing I'm going to do is just turn the layer opacity down on that. And then my mask image, I'm going to change that to the noise mat. And yeah, then we can really see, look at that nice effect as it's kind of being occluded by that noise. And probably you'd want that noise to also kind of evolve over time to really create this nice kind of like um, dust dust effect that would be happening in there. So now, yeah, now it's just kind of like playing around. I I messed around. What did else did I add? I had a time glitch RGB. So let's go into the glitch and see, some other glitching things you can add. Now you can add things like bad TV. I do think it's a little useful to kind of know practically maybe how they would shoot something like this, because that can guide you for the effects and the particular chains that you want to make. I'm gonna go ahead and apply time glitch RGB because like this is feeling like a very digital effect. But I was able to kind of like mess with these settings a little bit uh, to just get an overall something that kind of looked like a gate weave. And I think it was just through kind of randomizing position a little bit. And then I wanted these to be, yeah, all the way, really, really down all the way. Size up all the way. There we go. So I kind of wanted to make this just feel as though the film was slipping left and slipping right a little bit. And of course, you could kind of like turn on or turn off to the music. Speaking of the films kind of slipping in and out, they actually call that gate weave. That means like the film is so cheap, it's misregistered, and the camera, the 35 millimeter camera, it's not gonna be even 35 millimeters, it's gonna be 16 millimeter, right? We're talking 1982 here. So I want to add a little bit of shake in that. I'm going to come back here to the graphics, and I'm going to add some shake in. So I come here to geometry adjustment, and I'll add some shake, and I'm going to have that actually happen at the very top. And that gives me something that looks like that. And that's not quite right because I want maybe, I have to think now, is the film shaking, or is the room shaking, or is the object shaking? But I just want little touches of this. So I can see my magnitude of 0.3 is kind of lots. So what I think I'm going to do here actually is I'm going to jump into my plugins. I'm going to go ahead and add another step sequencer. And I think I want the step sequencer to just kind of like return zeros and ones. And if it returns a 1, then I want the magnitude kind of to be 1. And if it returns a 0, then it just turns off. So I think what this is going to do is I'm going to get like some nice, like kind of like periodicity, right? like through a random periods, I can like add in some shake and then it will turn off. That's what I'm looking for. Is that a word? Periodicity. Let me go ahead and change this now to index, because just 0 and 1 will be fine. Zeros and ones will be fine. I'm going to change these rows, and let me hit my good old random trick again. Let me see, index, or maybe I do want number, rows of 1, and maybe I need 2 here. There we go. Yeah, sorry, I need 2 rows. Of course, I need 0 and I need 1. So I need 2 values. So probably a value of 1 doesn't do me much. I need 2 rows. So then, yeah, let's just go ahead and let's plug that here into magnitude. I'm going to use that data source here in that step sequencer 2, and that's giving me kind of like all or nothing, which, I don't know, maybe if you've got some pretty intense horror moments going on out there, maybe this is good, but I'm going to just command click and reduce this way on down so that when I get 100%, yeah, there we go. We get some nice shake going on in there. I'm going to come back in here and reduce that number down even more. Let's say 0.02. Seems like a nice value to me. Give me a little bit of shake. Reduce the intensity way down too. So just some kind of a subtle effect. Great. So then I think the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a lookup table to all of this. So you notice we still kind of have like gray and we still have red. So I want to do a little final color correction on the whole composite. I come here to the canvas main output, and I'm going to apply a LUT. So LUT stands for lookup table, which basically is a way for you to hold a bunch of like color correction the way you want to treat pixels. So I'm going to come here to LUT. And VDMX is actually going to ship with some demo LUTs, and you can kind of see right away what effects I'm going to get here: adventure, drama, dystopia. But you can make your own. So I'm going to do that just inside Photoshop, and I've got some nice. I went to the pumpkin patch here and did some quick shots of some of these freaky looking skeleton animals sitting on pumpkins, and I think I'll work with this one. And then I also pulled a still from what I thought would be some useful reference, and that was not that. It was this shot from Dawn of the Dead. And look at this, man, this is great reference. Look at this. We can see the noise. We can see all the colors that we're going to want to get in here. We can see this like nice cheap film stock. It's not very well exposed. We can really see like kind of the grain and the silver in the film stock. So let's go and open that up. And let's just let me undock that so I can. I'm going to try and match this on the right here on the left. These freaky things in the Halloween I mean, probably I could also take a screenshot of this if I want to match this, but I don't know. It's fun for the demo. I'm going to come over here and I'm just still going to want these guys side by side. I'm going to cover that up. That's a little distracting. Let me come to this guy, and what am I going to do here? I am going to come into my layers right down here in the bottom, and I'm going to add some adjustment layers. Now, this can only hold information about your color, so you can only use the color correction adjustment layers. Like, you can't hold a glow inside a lookup table. Or you can't also say, like, hey, in this particular part of the image, I'd like to have this style color effect. So this is merely about holding color correction of the actual overall pixel values. So one reason I like to do this in Photoshop is I get my nice curves, you know, here that I can go ahead and adjust. Let me close this. That's kind of obnoxious. There we go. So you guys can see this a little bit better. All right. So right away we can see what's going on there, right? Like that's pretty crazy. So I want like the highlights of this thing, all the light values need to be super magenta, and then it seems to me that like all of the dark values need to be pretty green. So I'm gonna come in here to the green, and I'm just gonna kind of bump in and inject a bunch of green and a bunch of blue into the dark areas, and then the red is going to be like kind of where I'm going to create the magenta, and I want that to really be in the highlight areas. We can also see there's kind of like a lack of contrast there in the highlight, so I'm going to create that actually with levels. I come into my adjustment layers, I'm going to come into levels, and I'm just going to kick my input white down. I'm trying to actually reduce contrast, and I'm going to do that on the black too. So we're starting to get some of that faded look. There's maybe a little too much over here, just enough to try and get some of that look of that magenta, of that glowing light there is now I'm starting to see that over here in the white values. The other thing inside curves, I think I'm going to come into these blue values even more, and this whole thing is actually, I'm going to tone it down a little bit, just right. I want to inject a bunch of blues into the shadows, and have kind of the opposite curve over here in the mids. And it's going to give me also this really cheap kind of film stock look because it's having trouble processing the colors at certain values, right? Cool, okay. I think we've got a pretty good look going on here. Obviously I could kind of play all day, but that's where we're starting, which is like a pretty nice image, and this is where we're ending, which is a pretty degraded image. So that indicates to me that actually we're kind of in the right place. The whole thing is also, I would say, maybe could be desaturated a little bit. So I'm going to come in here and come to my hue and saturation, and I'm going to desaturate just a little bit here. Especially the greens, I notice, are really desaturated. So I'm going to desaturate the bejesus out of the greens and the blues a bit. Okay, so now I can actually hold all those adjustments I made, like all that thinking I did, all that stuff I did in Photoshop. I can go ahead and just hold that inside a lookup table. So that's inside Photoshop. I can go ahead and come into export, and I'm going to choose color lookup tables, and this is going to give me some options here. Okay, so right away the thing you really got to know is that VDMX takes the cube file format, and I'm going to give this a description, and let's call this zombies, and let's go ahead and click OK. And now for right now I'm just going to go ahead and save this on my desktop. And now I need to load this inside of VDMX. So I come to VDMX. Let me just go ahead and minimize Photoshop real quick. So I'm going to come into VDMX, and if I come here to help, I can go open assets folder in the Finder, and I can see here are where my LUTs are, all my cubes. So I can find the oops, I still named it the name of the thing. Let's change it back to zombies, and I'm going to add it here inside the LUTs. Okay, and now let's go ahead and the last step here is to add in that LUT. Let me go ahead and choose zombies, and look at that. I got a nice, man, that is really looking like Dawn of the Dead, man. That's a lot of fun. I think I'm gonna go ahead and last step. I just can't help myself. I'm gonna load in the logo, see what that looks like. There we go. I'm gonna make sure that that's actually, just let me remove all here. Remove close all gaps, and I need to make sure that that's inside graphics, and I need to make sure that that's noise mat, right, like that. Let me close that. Cool. Okay, so last thing I would have to do is like kind of play the music, and then I could maybe just like cut between the different rotation and scale effects. Let me just go and close these all up. Setup's kind of done. I'm ready to perform with this thing if I want, or play back some sort of live playback. I can also just, man, I can have all kinds of fun with changing those values in and out if I want to create more of like kind of a Stranger Things style look. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this extra special Halloween edition VDMX tutorials, and if you make anything with this, go ahead and let the guys know. You can tag it on. You can tag VidVox and VDMX on Twitter, and you can find them, of course, at vdmx.vidvox.net. You can find me on Twitter at Colin_Movecraft. Let's go ahead and have some Star Runner take us out. Thank you, Star Runner.